Now, coming to you live from the Microtel Inn & Suite Studio 104, void of two working smoke detectors. It's the 2020 Dgpt Championship Day 4 recap with Terry. Just fine. We're wow, looks like the second I did that and got things started, it was telling me that the internet was not working. So hopefully it is. I'm going to take just a moment to make sure that everything is good to go. Oh yeah, clicking on some buttons. Holy cow, would you look at this? So I'm just taking just a moment. Oh, there it is, Alex. Holy cow, Alex, every day you are the first. I feel like I should, Alex, I got to send you a prize. Reach out to me on Facebook. Reach out to me on Facebook, as I'm going to take just a moment to do a few things, guys. And yeah, let's get you a prize there, Alex, because every night I feel like you are the first to be here and ready to go every single night. So I appreciate that. That is some scary dedication. Either that or you're just always lurking or lingering on the YouTubes. All right, I'm going to go put this link out there. If you wanted to do the same, you could. It is officially now posted to Facebook. And I also just want to double check that everything is good to go. So I'm sorry, you're going to see me click around just for a moment. A few people had just reached out asking if there was going to be a recap. Well, here's your answer. I'm going to put a few details out there, and man, so much clicking, so many buttons, so many things to do, all just so that I can semi-coherently ramble on with you guys. All right. Let me do one more thing. There we go. So, quick recap this evening. Of course, we are now here. Our champions have been crowned. If somehow you don't know what's happened, well, I'm going to tell you. All right. So, if you want to avoid spoilers, you're in the wrong spot. I would log off right now. So here's my official warning to that. I want to just kind of break down what we saw a little bit out there today. We just had 8 competitors that work themselves through the famed and storied Hornets Nest disc golf course. 4 men, 4 women, $40,000 to the 2 different champions. Congratulations. And really, honestly, to anyone else that made it as far as they did and got themselves into today's action, of course, you probably already took home a pretty serious paycheck just for getting this far. And we're going to talk about some of those things. My boy Daniel Reynoso, Hype Man Dan from UDisc, I'm going to have to go out and find somewhere he made a post that I'm going to steal some of his data from, because otherwise I would have just had to look it up myself. And it was a perfect topic of something I wanted to talk about. So I'm going to go find where Dan made that post a little bit earlier. Also see some familiar faces, or should I say logins. Rock coming in from the West Coast. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well, you and Pat. And Cody Garner, I said it yesterday. Cody and Emily were out here, and I think Cody was doing some photography work for the weekend. And well, I know he was, but he was working with the Disc Golf Pro Tour in that sense, and really appreciate all the hard work out there with you guys. And I know Billy is often out there doing photography, although not this weekend. So, wow, what an incredible day. Just let that just sink in for a moment. Now, I'm not cashing a $20,000 check. I'm not living large. I think I saw on Haley King on her post on the hailstorm that she got herself a fancy hotel room, was eating I think it was a 32-ounce steak. She is she's basking in that disc golf rich money, and rightfully so. I just saw a little bit of that one of her posts on Instagram or somewhere on social media. So that is incredible for her to be out there enjoying herself. It was that's awesome. Okay, so let me recap the day. This will not go on too long. I know I say that all the time, but I do mean it. I know it's late. It's a Sunday night. Some of you have other priorities in the morning. I personally just have to get back to Wisconsin at some point, but let me see what we can break down for you guys here today. So first and foremost, let's go right into some of the scores. As always, these come from UDisc. We're going to do a little screen sharing with our friends over there at UDisc to break down and show you the details and the stats and some of the information found during today's play. So they went back out there. This was, for some women, only their second round. You could say that of Haley, Paige, and Kat. And Elisa, this was her third round of competition. So, all right, let's take a look at some of these scores here. They're obviously already sorted. Congratulations to Haley King. We'll get to some of those details in a moment because this isn't the final screen even. But let's take a quick look. Paige ran into trouble, obviously, as you can see here on 3 and 4, as did Lisa. 3 is just no joke for how difficult that hole really is. I don't know how much harder I feel like they made it than it was last year. I'm trying to remember it, but it feels like it was significantly harder this year than in years past. But you can see that's where a lot of them ran into trouble. And on the men's side, we'll get to later, it seemed like 4 also lots of trouble for some reason out there today, specifically. I'll say the wind didn't feel up. Everything was relatively calm throughout the day. It was very, very scoreable conditions, like I feel like we've seen the last day or two. And talk about a great start, by the way. Like let's start there with nerves. To see 3 out of the 4 get the birdie just to get the round open. Yeah, it's 288, but that is a tunnel shot by all accounts. And I think it's one thing to step up to a hole, and I know this was talked about. I think I said this in one of my early check-ins, maybe in the very first check-in of the weekend, and I have to give all credit to Sean Jack. That was his bright insight. This might be, and you guys can argue about this if you want, but this might be the toughest par 3 starting hole on the tour. I can't think of a tougher one. We kind of quickly went through the numbers. Now, there's longer ones. Jonesboro, where we just were, of course, is longer. Maple Hill is longer. That's a par 4. So on and so forth. I'm not going to break down every hole for you, but I think of D-Glow. I think of the Memorial, whichever course you're at. All of those holes I would not consider tougher, especially the ones that are the par 3s. So hitting that gap with the nerves, with the added pressure, with the gallery, one of the small galleries we've had this year, all of those things come into play on the very first hole. And I think the MPOT it's not ridiculous, but it is so tough to peer that gap. I mean, think of a hole like we talk often about, like a hole 6 at Maple Hill. Now, yes, that is down into the right ultimately, but I mean, you're talking about a pretty narrow corridor when you're lining up that shot. And so very, very tough opening hole for both the men and the women. So that's something to keep in mind. I thought it was awesome to see 3 of the birdies. I think of Haley's specifically, which is actually really low. And then I got a really good skip and kind of skip perfectly straight right to the basket. Yeah, that would, I thought that was an awesome start. Sorry, I was reading Disc Blaster, who said De La Viega number 1 is harder. Maybe, and that was the closest thing. That's a national tour event, of course, over at the Masters Cup. That was probably the closest argument to a par 3 that's actually tougher to start a round of our Elite Series events. So, but thank you. That was a consideration, although not on the Pro Tour. All right. So again, looking at the numbers here, really Haley, I mean, look at the way she put together 4 birdies in a row coming off of the bogey on hole number 7, and she just barely leaked out of bounds on hole number 7. So that wasn't far from being a par in that sense. But then getting 4 birdies in a row, and then really just playing it clean 16, 17, and 18. And not to fully, drive that point home, but I know for the last 2 days, I've said, look at those last 3 holes, especially for the women, especially on hole 18. That is a par 4, but if you don't make it out of the gap, you relinquish any possibility of taking a birdie there. You have to get out of the gap. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to get out of the gap, and if you don't, the best you're going to card is a 4 and take the par. That, of course, is exactly what Haley did. Paige threw a nearly perfect shot out of the gap. I mean, it was perfect, and she just didn't get up and down from there. And obviously that's ultimately what we saw her then push into a playoff. But so the finish there, I also look at Kat, who was just rolling right through this. And you see her with more birdies than any other player out there. Unfortunately, really the tail is to tell is all really hole 17. 16 a 4, yeah, not, plenty of 4s can happen there. That's not crazy, so to speak. But the 8 on hole number 17, we really saw her struggle. I'll call it a green, although it plays to an elevated basket that's on top of a rock. So it is, by golf terms, a green, but very much not green. And for her, that was kind of what looks like it really sealed the deal. She came back, still got the birdie on 18, not giving up in that sense and fighting back. But really, I mean, if there's anything that jumps off the page at you, of course, it has to be this huge glaring number at the end of the round. And that stalled what looked like was a relatively, I don't want to say she was about to walk it in by any means, because you have those holes. But man, I think a lot of people really thought she was going to walk away the champion here. So unfortunately for her, struggled on the putting green. I think when it was all said and done, I think she technically had 3 putts, and it shows, I guess it shows four putts. I guess I wasn't thinking about her first one, but yeah, 4 putts when it was all said and done on that basket. And I think there were a lot of hearts out there that were just breaking, because you're watching her, what feels like such a good round, and it truly was. It doesn't just feel like it. It was a really good round, racking up all the birdies that she had, and then just to see it kind of all unravel on that particular elevated basket. So we know Kat has been fierce and has been competitive for all of these years. And all you can say is, yeah, it of course it sucks for her. That goes without saying. But if there's anyone that's going to come back, and anyone that's still going to be right there in the mix, right there in the hunt, right there in the thick of things every single weekend, it's going to be Katrina Allen. And then Lisa Fakis, who just really never found her groove, unfortunately. You look at the struggle she had, her and Haley not making the island on hole number 2. And then hole 3 got her, as did 4. And just really that rough start. You talk about trying to get under par by 2, 3, or 4 or so when you're in that front half. And instead, that's where she really racked up most of her over par strokes. So not really quite getting to it. Then, of course, when it was all said and done, this huge battle that was taking place, it was so close throughout, and it's all said and done, and then it goes to the playoff. And let me just tell you how much I never should trust or believe the chat board, who last night had me almost fully convinced that if there was a playoff, that there wouldn't be a playoff, and it would be relied on, it would be decided upon exclusively by the points. Well, clearly not the case. I heard that early on in the round, actually, over the live control room and calls, someone had said what the playoff holes were, that they would be 8, 11, and then 18 in a loop. And I was like, yeah, dang you, people. Too many founders for you guys, or something, that last night giving me bad information. And I think I did say I wouldn't bet my house on it, but clearly it's a good thing I didn't, that there was, in fact, a sudden death playout. What I did find, or maybe that got confused with some of you, was the fact that, because I hadn't heard anything about playoffs at all, and unfortunately I just took what I read on here last night and talked about it. But I did hear later that any ties for second, third, and fourth would ultimately have been decided by the points instead. So to put that out there and to give you that, maybe that's what somebody heard and got a little bit confused. Josh, maybe you were picking up what I was putting down earlier when we were talking, when I said Dan put out a cool statistic out there, and I'm going to take a look and hopefully find it so I can read off the details. But yes, Josh from Udisk is saying a cool stat from the FPO is today was the biggest payday for every player on the card. And with the way the ranking, the numbers, the way everyone shifted, biggest payday for every single person on the card. And we'll talk about what those are in just a few moments. So again, I want to go back, take a look. Here's our playoff scenario. I'll say, only because of where I was standing, that when Paige was on the left getting ready to putt for birdie on the first playoff hole, she was at 40 something maybe away, and she had a little tree branch in her way, just a little one that was hanging down, and she was contemplating. And when I talked to her during the MPO play, I saw her go over and look at that spot again. Maybe it's a spot she'll never forget, I'm not sure. But she looked at that spot where she was putting for birdie on the first playoff hole, and I said to her, it looked good right out of your hand. And she's like, I know, I just barely had to miss that leaf, or that branch, or the iron leaf, whatever. She said, I knew I just barely had to miss it, and I wish I would have straddled, because if I straddled out, I then think I would have totally missed it. Because when she released it, it looked really good right out of her hand. And then we saw it hit the branch and then ultimately knocked down. And of course, she walked away at the par. And I don't know if you guys picked this up during the actual show. When she took an extra moment or two, she had moved a log or a rock. I'm not sure which it was. Might have been a log. And underneath it, maybe 8 or 10 inch, really, really super tiny little snake was there. And it was just kind of squirreling around. I don't know if that's the right term, but it was just kind of, it was going all about, and it was just going crazy. Like it had just been uncovered. And understandably, Paige wasn't a fan of seeing the snake. And I thought it was great how she seemed to put it out of her mind. But there was a snake there, and I wasn't sure if anyone else knew that for sure or not, or if we correctly relayed that back to the booth. And then when I asked her and said about straddling or not, she's like, I didn't want to reset again. I felt like I took too much time already as it was. And I thought that was really interesting to hear her thought after the fact, that she felt like, she was at or near her time limit. And to me, I always think, of course, the rule states, free of distraction, I think is the official terminology. I would count a snake as you needing to take as much time as you need to get either the snake out of sight or out of your stance. Again, very tiny one, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of snakes. I don't think I would have ran off and I started squealing or anything, but no. Not a fan of snakes. So, okay. She got snake razzed, I guess you could say. It looks so good out of her hand. So they go to the second playoff hole, and Paige hits left, and then it kicks right. She's off the fairway. She's off the fairway to the right. I have to rethink about it. Doesn't really advance too far, and then makes a really nice third shot Now, the only conversation that I think that really took place after that is whether or not she was actually out. And I'll be the first to admit, when I watched Haley throw her approach shot, I thought she was underneath the pin. From where I was standing, the perspective I had, I thought she was no more than 5 or 8 feet from the pin is what I was thinking. And obviously she was longer than that. And then I feel like the conversation was had later as to whether or not she was in fact out. And so Paige, I'm not sure if she insisted or if there was much of a conversation, but Paige went and putted first. Maybe that was a strategy. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she thought that Haley was even closer. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and see how the dynamic played out between them. But I know after the fact, people were saying it seemed like Haley was actually out and Haley should have went first. I can't say too much on that. Mo, who is of course running the controls for the live broadcast, also said that she thought, first of all, that Paige was 100% making that. And she said, we got a great shot of this on the live broadcast. Haley was super confused. Okay. And then he says, Paige just kind of went to her lie. All right. When Paige went to her lie and then made the putt, I assumed Haley was underneath the basket. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. She's just going to go putt out and Haley's right there and no big deal. So the fact that Haley actually was deeper than she really was, maybe Paige was confused herself. I guess I'll have to ask her that. But Mo was saying it seemed like Haley was confused, and maybe that's why a bunch of us are confused. Maybe it's Sunday night and the Pro Tour's done and it's been a long year and we're all confused. I'm not sure. Oh my gosh. Speaking of snakes, Luke Turnbull from Australia is joined. Hey, Luke. Good day, mate. Hope you're well. And you guys have all sorts of things that want to kill us. Josh also says, dialed up the drama for sure, but I thought Haley was out too. Huh. Yeah. So again, I don't know if we know Paige is a fierce competitor, but she would never intentionally misplay something or not play something by the rules. So maybe there was just some genuine confusion. If I think of it, I'll have to reach out to her. I would love to know, but my guess is she probably thought Haley was closer. And to be fair, Haley, I think, threw a black disc and then there was just a ton of leaves by the basket. And so she probably just assumed, like I did, that she was just right next to the basket and that she had maybe was covered by a few leaves. But yeah, and AJ says it seemed like Paige just did what she wanted to do. So I don't know. I can't say. I don't know if there was any ill intention or ill will or maliciousness and or I'll say ignorance of knowing whether or not she was out versus Haley was out. I'm going to leave it at that. However, what all that matters is Haley steps up and makes the putt. And all I keep thinking to myself, and I've thought this for years, if I ever would have had a chance to win a Worlds or a USD, any big event, all I've ever thought, first of all, I'm not planning on ever getting there. I never really was. But all I ever thought is I could see having like an 18-footer to win Worlds or a 12-footer to win Worlds and have a one-stroke advantage and then just airball it. Like that's something I would do just because I think the nerves would get to me. And I mean, heck, I can airball from 12 feet when I'm not about to win an event. But it's incredible. It's just so incredible to know what was at stake for young Haley to then step up and knock down that putt. And it was in such Haley fashion, just like I think we would have seen from Paige if given the situation. She putts with authority. She does not, you didn't see that trickle in. You didn't see it just barely get over the basket. You didn't see it, wobble or flutter. Like normal putt, dead center, knocks it down. So congratulations to Haley King. The only quick story I'd tack on to the top of that is I've run a ton of tournaments, and Haley played in a tournament that I ran. Her and her dad played in it, and that had to be 6-ish, 7 years ago now, when she literally was like 11 or 12 or 13 or something. Once you do all that math, it's pretty cool to see what she's done. And Wisconsin, of course, is proud of her. And to watch her be kind of revered as an up-and-coming professional that had game, and then to see her do that all within Wisconsin, where I'm from, and then watch her take to the big scale, to the big time, and go onto the big tour and do what she's done has been really, really cool. And of course, as Paige had mentioned in her award speech, just saying she knew that Haley's time was coming, and Haley's been close, and Haley has battled with the likes of Paige and others before, and this is clearly not going to be the last of her. In fact, if this is just the start of her gaining that much more confidence and performing and keeping all of it together, she clearly is going to be tough to beat. She's got a great forehand, a great backhand, throws pretty far as anyone else out there, and then has a killer putt. I'm not sure what else you guys really would want from a top-level competitive player. So congratulations to Haley, and hugs, high fives, pats on the back also to, like I said, the other three women. Very, very gracious and fierce competitors out there in Paige, Katrina, and Lisa Fakis. Okay, so let us take a quick look. I'm sorry, I'm looking over here at the, like you guys can see it, I'm looking here over at the chat board. Also, AJ is asking as to the interview, interviewing Calvin or Haley. I'll just say that my job, I love my job. And some people, whether it's a comfort level with me or just public speaking or being in the spotlight or processing your emotions after the largest, biggest, one of the most grand things that could ever happen to you, I can understand. And Haley outwardly is not, she's not like me. And she's not a chatty Cathy and is an over talker like I obviously can be. I can talk to a camera for 8 hours and amuse myself while doing it. So I don't blame her for being a little bit timid or shy, and even you hear it in her voice how soft spoken she really is, as I come busting in, blaring in with some questions for her. And I think she was just trying to process everything. And I'll say this, you look at the days when I talked to Ricky Wysocki when he was 18 or 19 and winning the Players Championship in Augusta, Georgia back in like 2011. Go back and look at one of my vlogs when I talked to Ricky then, as opposed to when you hear from Ricky today, or when Ricky gets in front of a camera himself and does some kind of a funny YouTube video. Everybody's on a different curve, and the more you win, the better you get. And we see plenty of wins coming in Haley's future. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's take a quick look. I'm going to go move over, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to bring you guys now to what should be the Mpo Finals. So if I click on this, this brings you to the finals. And yeah, sea of blue. And the match between Kevin and Chris, you could see, was just hot and heavy. I don't have a better way to word that. It was exciting, exhilarating. It was who wants it more here and now. You see the 8 birdies put together in a row by Chris Dickerson. And I kind of in my mind had thought, if I was going to be interviewing Chris Dickerson, just a thought that came to mind would have been, most players on this course would be happy with getting 8 birdies, period. And then Chris puts 8 together in a single string. Like, I don't know how often we're ever going to see that on this specific layout. Obviously, Kevin was just a couple off of that, but man, the golf that they were playing, I feel like they just made it look so easy. You see him then just take a few pars, obviously 11 through 14, and a little up and down here to go at it on 18. He needed obviously to go for the birdie, is what he was playing for, and he turned it over and couldn't get himself out of there, and then with that really didn't have to force Kevin to make the putt from 28 feet, and so Kevin was able to just lay it up and drop it in. Austin, a little trouble early. Again, that's that birdie zone. 1 through 10 is where you need to pick up a ton of birdies and hopefully stay clean. And Kelvin, of course, struggled as well, as you could see that. And then, at a certain point, it really became just a tale of the two different races. You had Kevin and Chris, which I think at one point were at their 9 under or 8 unders, or 9 under. Yeah, they were both at 9 under. And then I feel like going into the last hole or two, both Austin and Kelvin were at 3 under, or they tied a few holes prior to that. They were tied at 1 under. And like I said, it was just really a tale of who was going to take first and who was going to take third when it was all said and done. It was, and talk about a tale of two courses and what this course will do to you. Kelvin played it bogey free, 10 under yesterday. And today he managed to only get a total of 6 birdies. Obviously had the trouble there on 17, but he only got 6 birdies. And I feel like hole 2 is one of those must get birdies for both MPO and FPO. It's one of the easier holes. You got to pick one up there. And then I feel like also 6 is right in his wheelhouse. He just missed the putt there. 7 is right in his wheelhouse. Like, for someone as good as Kelvin, all of these players, I feel like 7 as a whole, there's trouble, but I feel like that's one that they can really feast on. And to see Heimberg not get 6 or 7, continue just to let a little bit of, well, I don't know if there was any wind in his sails at that point, but there wasn't even a gentle breeze that was trying to drum up out there. And Kelvin just did not get things going. So we saw the battle between him and Austin. And interestingly enough, I was, one way I was looking at this potential day out there today was the fact that Austin and Katrina, who are dating and have been traveling around the country together, the two of them potentially had the chance to leave Hornets Nest today with $40,000 extra between the two of them. Now, ultimately, they did both finish in 3rd place, which I think if we take a look at our numbers, I'm going to use this graphic yet again. Ultimately, they both finished in 3rd place, so they both walked away with $5,000 apiece. Obviously for that $10,000 total. So not a bad day as a couple playing golf, both of them getting their largest payouts ever. So certainly not a bad day out there, but what a unique situation that between the two of them, they could have walked away with all that money. Now I am going to take a quick look while I leave this stat up for you and take a look at Daniel Reynoso, Hype Man Dan from UDisc. Real quick, he says career highest payouts before the finale today, and then what they actually got. So Dickerson took 10,000 down last weekend, 8 days ago now. Heimberg has won 6,000. Kevin Jones, previously the most he'd ever won before today was 4,000. Now that becomes 20. And Austin Hannum's largest payday before today was $1,500. And so he takes home $5,000. Pretty darn incredible. And then on the FPO side, as I'm going to bring this back for you guys. On the FPO side, as I take a quick look, Paige Pierce had previously won $5,500. I think we talked about that last night. So now her 2nd place finish gives her $10,000. Katrina Allen, previously her largest paycheck of her career was $3,160. I don't know if that was, I don't know which event that was. It might have been Worlds from a couple years ago, maybe the 2014 Worlds. Come on, Daniel, cite your sources here for me. So when I steal your numbers, I know where you got them. But now, anyway, she's now taking home $5,000 as her largest. Haley King, $1,200 payout. Now her highest is 20 grand. And Lisa Fakis's previous largest payout before today was $2,000. And now with the fourth place finish, her new career high single day earning $3,000. Not bad. A couple days work. Yeah, it was pretty incredible out there. As I read a few details off the board, I see Cody is saying, Terry, did you get info on how far the drive was on hole 12 for Kelvin? Yeah, he just smashed that drive. I have a new appreciation this weekend specifically. I've been watching Kelvin for 5-ish years, ever since he just came onto the scene, really, in Florida. I have some of his earliest golf and him playing well at the pro level in Florida from Throw It on the Mountain a few years ago. Watching him play this weekend and put shots out there, 12's amazing, and it's kind of a more wide open hole, so to speak, so you do have more room to work with. Not that he uses it, but I think of when you watch him lace a shot on 17, for instance, when you watch him lace some of those lines on something like a hole 9 or a hole 7 where you're still trying to hit a line, the straightness, the straight power of not relying or needing flex out of some of his shots, it's truly incredible. It's disgusting when you watch it. And I think about big throws, and you always think, okay, something that's bending left to right, it turns over, it flexes back. Yeah, he throws those too when he needs to, and if he's got the room for it. But the fact of how far he throws just on a rope it's just truly, it's disgusting. All right, let's see if I can read a few questions off the board. I need to get a little bit caught up. I apologize, I'm behind here. Someone said earlier, Prodigy should be happy. Absolutely. A solid performance, them taking down spots 1 and 2 on the MPO side. Discraft, of course, lots of representation in the finale on both the MPO and the FPO side. Haley, Paige, Austin Hannum. So, and then of course Kat over with Prodigy. Yeah, so there was a lot of good representation that was out there today. All right. Will we get Haley on Smashbox? I'm certainly going to reach out to her. I'm not sure where she is, if she's traveling, what she's doing, all that kind of stuff. But knowing that we had Kevin not too long ago, our first inclination will be to have Haley. Our second inclination would be to see if we could have them both. But we definitely want to start with Haley, who I don't think we've had on the show before. So we'll be glad to do so. And we'll see. Again, I'm not sure what her plans, what her traveling is, but she will be our first person we make sure to reach out to. Alex had said that Austin never gave up. I totally agree with that. Yeah, and he was a little bit of the dark horse. I mean, he said to me yesterday or the day before in an interview, he's not necessarily synonymous with winning. He obviously performs well, and he's a really solid player, but you don't see him take down really big events. And, he wanted to go out and try and make that statement. He came up short this weekend, but you saw how fierce he was and played throughout the entire weekend and never did give up. Chris says Kelvin might need hurricane conditions to play well from now on. Yeah, maybe he needed a full-blown, the hailstorm from earlier in the day wasn't enough. I'm just going to tie those together for you guys. Maybe that wasn't enough for Kelvin to push him forward. And I think I got sidetracked. Sorry. the Bushnell Big Drive on 12, I think was unofficially measured at 590. Of course, it starts to fall a little downhill at a certain point, or slope gently downhill. I don't want to say I don't know how accurate that is, because I know we're using the Bushnell rangefinders. However, with all the people that get in the way between where it lands and then trying to measure back to the tee, I know that sometimes got a little bit hairy throughout the weekend, because you really have to, Jeff or whomever was using the rangefinder was trying to shoot it right back to the tee, and that became a little bit difficult with dozens of people walking down the fairway. But I think it was unofficially last marked at 590. That's what I put on Instagram, so it's got to be real. All right, because we all know Instagram is where you should get all your most precise news. I feel like Ryan says, I feel like next year they should make it so the semifinal and finals combine into 3-round event where they make a cut down to 4 players for the last round. What I'll say to this is I think there are a lot of great ideas. I think there's already been some that have been discussed and maybe even decided upon. I don't think we're going to see the exact same format. And I'll follow all of that up by saying I'm not a strategist. I'm not a real strategic thinker in that sense. So I'm the last guy to sit down and think about some other new format or style. So I love your thought, Ryan, and I think there could be a lot of really cool, good ideas out there. To tell you the truth, that's above my pay grade. But your idea sounds viable or plausible. Sounds like a decent idea. I think they may have already decided on some kind of format. Now, the one thing I personally do not know for certain is whether or not it's decided upon to be in Charlotte again. I feel like that was at least a 2-year commitment, being last year and this year. I don't know if that's a commitment for this year. And again, I'm speaking on behalf of Terry Miller, the disc golf guy, the rambling podcast nightly recap guy, and not on behalf of the Disc Golf Network or the Disc Golf Pro Tour at this point. But I do not know if there's a commitment to Charlotte for next year or not. That's all I can say. Obviously, Charlotte's an amazing city. The club's been nothing short of amazing. They've done so many good things. I would love to come back, and maybe that's what's in the cards. Maybe it's not. I couldn't tell you for sure. Did you leave with anyone's unwanted trophies today? No, I did think about reaching out to Rick and see if he wanted me to collect his third place trophy again this weekend. But I did not reach out to him. Josh says, Austin was 10th at Ledgestone. Kelvin and Chris last weekend. Kevin was GMC. Probably going back to the largest payout conversation not too long ago. Steve out of Wisconsin also says, were there any official split agreements on the payouts? I cannot confirm that. I have no idea. Even when Paige and Haley went into a playoff at that point and they knew there was a $10,000 difference, was there any decision to split any of that? I could not tell you. I do not know for a fact. I know last night I kind of talked about the idea of, could the players create their own new split where maybe it's not exactly how the payout was, but then create their own version of it. I don't know if any of that did happen or not. If it did, I wouldn't have been surprised. However, I do not know the status of that. And then I think too, obviously KJ and Chris are teammates. And I think I think Kelvin and Chris are pretty close friends. Was there any conversation, any agreements made? I cannot speak to that. All I can speak to is how wrong you guys were about the playoffs. All right. From last night. And I believed you kind of. Is the Tour Championship always at Hornets Nest? I think I kind of just talked about that. Ricky wasn't there to get his third place, and Cody suggested, yes, that I go ask for it. I did not this time. John says, love you, Terry. Oh, I appreciate that, John. I'm going to tangent off of that then. That was unscripted. It's funny. I've actually seen that I've lost subscribers over doing these over the last week or two. I'm okay with that. I have traditionally put up shot-by-shot coverage for the last, I don't know how many years. I have actually a huge backlog or bonus log of stuff that all should be coming out over the next couple of weeks. I have a bunch of Ledgestone, great Ledgestone, MPO and FPO footage. I've got PCS Open footage from over in Norway, and I'm going to go capture more footage this weekend, upcoming weekend in Vegas. So anyway, I realize that my channel typically has had that. Sometimes I have other random stuff. This is something I've been experimenting more diligently with at the USDGC, the WNC, and then this event. I make no promises as to how much they will or won't come out, but I have received more positive than negative in terms of you guys seemingly wanting to tune in and take some of this action in. So I really do appreciate it. If you guys like it, please let me know, because it's always tough to say what the numbers are. Naturally, the first post that comes in after this is like, this guy talked for an hour and a half and told me stuff I could have learned in 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks for watching for an hour and a half then, just so you could then make that comment. But I really do appreciate it. Why did Kale LaVisca not even show up, winning a B tier? Wisconsin is more important than a chance at a Dgpt title. I'm not sure. Did he make the finals? I don't think he went to enough Pro Tour events. I'd have to go do some math and some research, which maybe one of you guys could do, because I'm just throwing it out there. I'm guessing he didn't make the top 32 spots, would be my guess. And then with that, he's not invited to be here this weekend, even with his dimples and whatever else he wants to show the world. Ryan says the format is a ton of fun to watch, but I think the event will always lack some prestige due to the final round being only 18 holes with everyone starting it. Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, what I will follow that up with is say, I don't know how many brackets were spot on, how many were busted. I'm sure that stuff it maybe has been announced or released, but I think it's fair, only just by the numbers. I think any odds makers in Vegas, maybe I'll visit them next week, would say that to not see Paul or Ricky not only not make the finals, not only not win it, but not make the finals, but to not see Paul or Ricky there in attendance, or Eagle, so really what your top 3 out of 4 players, ratings or ranking wise, depending on what numbers you're using, to not see any of those 3 people even in it. And then on the FPO side, to see Haley pull it off and not have it be one of your top rated women in Paige. Of course, anything can happen in one round, but it's also fair to say, just by the numbers, those are some forms of upsets. And I don't know that, all I can say is I don't know if anyone would have picked the way that it went down. And that's no disrespect to our winners. Clearly, they went out there and did what it took. But if you're just playing by the numbers, I don't think you would have necessarily picked who ultimately took it down. Is that play to the format? Is that play to the course? Should there be any more or less advantage? I don't know any of those. Yeah, again, I'm not strategic enough to think about those things. Only Simon was out due to injury, is what Ray was saying. We saw Simon withdraw, which is ultimately what got Brian Earhart in. And kudos to Simon. Maybe I didn't touch on this earlier, because had he, not even showed up or said anything or showed up just to play a hole or two or something like that, like, he could have in theory collected a check and then went home. And I don't know how it worked, but I'm guessing he didn't even get a check for being there the first day, because he ultimately withdrew. I'm not sure how that works. But Brian Earhart then had the opportunity, and unfortunately he came up short of moving on, but he got in only because of Simon's withdrawal. So kudos to Simon for, I guess, recognize that, and then also then doing it in a fashion that gave Brian a chance to then get himself in there. So Steve says Kale was ranked 26th or something. He was on the original Bushnell bracket. Matt Bell replaced him. Okay. yeah, I guess then Kale had other priorities, as would be the long and short of that. Maybe it was the commitment. Maybe it was the format he does or doesn't love. I'm not sure. I don't know what he had going on in Wisconsin or Minnesota. I feel like he probably played in one somewhere in Wisconsin or Minnesota this weekend. But I guess to him, and we do know that Kale's not a flyer, and so maybe without being in an official swing. Now, had he played USDGC, which he usually actively does not participate in, had he done USDGC, then it would have been natural to then come here and play in this event. But not doing one maybe is kind of what prompted him to not do the other. Excuse me, that would be just my guess. He's just rolling around in his RV, trying to look like a a retired couple or something. I'm not sure. The retired couple that comes up and beats you at every tournament. Yes, Simon dropping out is what also then got Austin Hannum the bye, which. So here's the question that I'd ask you guys, because it can be highly debated, and it may or may not factor into next year's format, which I don't even recall that was proposed. But is there any advantage to showing up so late? Or is there a bigger advantage, like Chris Dickerson did last year or the year before, which is have to play himself all the way through? Now, Chris, I think, has proven as one of the best in the world. He did it last year by playing every single round. And this year, he got to skip a round or two, and he didn't have those rounds under his belt. Do you guys feel like on the FPO or MPO side, think about Sarah Hokum, Paige Pierce, Katrina Allen, and Haley all got to skip a round that the other competitors had to fight through? Do you feel like there's an advantage or a disadvantage of getting those, I'll call them practice rounds? They're clearly not practice, they're competitive. But I guess the question is, do you feel like that helps or hurts our players this late in the season? Okay. I'd love to know what you think of that. Put it in the comments. Ray is saying, is the ESPN2 show only going to have the finals? Will they have highlights from earlier rounds? The way that it was described to me, and I can't promise I know much, is that roughly it's a 2-hour block when it's all said and done. And I'm not sure if that's actually like 44 minutes and 44 minutes, because an hour of TV is, or a half hour is usually 22 minutes. So I don't know if that's 2 44-minute blocks of actual golf, but it was described to me as roughly 25% of the footage will be talking about how the players got to where they are, either in the event or throughout the year. But 25% is more or less backstory. And then the other remaining portion is going to be equally split between men and women showing the play. Now, it's still not going to be shot by shot. So just just simple math will tell you that. For instance, when Jomez releases 9 holes, I think they range around 42, 44, 48 minutes. So if they have men and women to cover, and then they have a backstory, and then there's probably going to be some other pieces in there, you're not seeing all 18 holes by both divisions times every single shot. It's going to be condensed significantly to get all of that in there. And Jonathan and their crew, I know, are working diligently on it. And I think it was even announced. Did I see November 24th, 28th? A release date sometime in mid to late November is what I saw. And obviously that will get blasted out there as the date gets closer. Being how closed in and tight Hornets Nest is, I'd say every chance you have to play the course for practice or round play is beneficial. I can appreciate that input, Cody. And then Juventus 23 immediately contradicts you and says it hurts. For every Chris Dickerson, there were many others who didn't even make it to the finals. Part of playing each round also comes down to luck, and you can't get lucky a lot. You can't get lucky a lot if you play a lot. Okay, That's another take on it. Sam says, I think there's probably both an advantage and a disadvantage. Wow, you guys all right in order. That said, end of the year bodies are hurt and tired. I think one or more less competitive rounds is probably a bigger advantage. Okay. And thank you guys. You guys are spelling it out. As of now, it looks like November 24th at 8 p.m. That's where I got the 8 mixed up. November 24th, 8 p.m. Eastern is what is being set on the board. You guys also gave me bad information last night, just saying. Okay. I think not too much to say on the numbers and whatnot. Of course, the Bushnell brackets are out there. I'd love to know how you did on those. On the FPO bracket, here's what I'll say. I had 12 points, finishing in a 4,635th with my 12 points, if I'm reading that correctly. On the MPO side, I had 14 points. So if you did the math, I picked wrong a lot, finishing 1,894th. So clearly, I am not doing making very many good picks in that case. And then also UDisc. We'll talk more about it this upcoming week, but udisc.com/count. They're looking for a little bit of help for you to spend an hour out at your local course. There's essentially a survey. You go and double check or count how many people are playing. Then you submit it via UDisc, and they're asking for you to, I think, essentially volunteer 1 hour of just doing that, which is great because you could go out and maybe you're practice putting, but you can keep an eye on hole number 1, or you're going out there with your kids and you're just hanging out for a little while and you're not ready to play yet, or you can go out there during a lunch hour, whatever the case is. Go find it on udisc.com/count, and it gives you all the information. And I want to get a shout out in there because UDisc is so gracious in everything else they're giving for information here. All right. And it's pretty cool because I know they're working with some college researchers to then figure out just how many people are playing disc golf or doing their best research. And I'm sure there's some guesstimating obviously here, but with our sport, it's unique in the sense that, you can figure out how many rounds a year are bowled. For instance, when people go bowling, even recreationally, they could technically still pull some sales data as to how many rounds or games of bowling are done each year. There's so many other things that I think can be tracked, and disc golf, because we're the majority is at 85% of courses are still free. There's not necessarily a good way to get a count as to how many people play disc golf. So I don't want to get too far ahead as to what all the premise and the background and the details to it are, but udisc.com/count is something you guys should definitely check out. Billy says that she loved the format. Tough course. The final round showed the money brought the pressure. Had intense moments right to the end of both divisions. That's true. There was I've been around a while, so yeah, I'm always excited when a tournament's coming to a close. I'm always excited for the best battles. I very easily can either put aside any personal bias. I want to see the best disc golf. I want to see the magical moments, the pressure-packed putt or drive that gets executed. I don't want to see it, but the dramatic, Calvin basket roll into the water. I'm not calling for those things, but those are what get us so invested in watching golf. And I felt all of those emotions and then some today, always knowing, kind of like USDGC, but in a very different way, hole 17 was lurking. Hole 16 was no joke. Hole 15, the gauntlet, those holes to close out, just so crucial. And then think about the two perspectives on the men and the women's side for 18. And I kind of love that they're two totally different holes in some regard, because you have to hit that gap on 18, like I said, on the FPO side, or there's no chance at birdie. Like you're giving up any chances of getting a birdie. It's just not physically possible. So you have to hit that initial gap, and then you have to get up and down from a very wide, hopefully a very wide portion of the hole. The men, it's again, to insert myself briefly, I get to that hole. I'm not doing that in 100, well, maybe once in 100 tries on hole 18 from the long men's tee. To watch our players be able to drive that green or outdrive that green and then have to make a putt to the elevated basket with all the pressure and the largest gallery there, it's just incredible. So I love that those two holes are different and they play so different. The only other way I would look at it, and that I would consider, is you have the FPOs play from a slightly shorter tee out in the open, but you'd essentially be making it the exact same shot, just a little shorter, so that it could still be potentially birdied with a really good drive. But the fact that they tucked it into where they did to make a totally different hole, I really do kind of like that as well. The only thing I don't love is how people struggling on 17 sometimes are throwing over 18's fairway or through 18's fairway or near 18's tee from the FPO side. That's doesn't come into play because they're not backed up this weekend, but in a regular event, I feel like playing that FPO tee, the ones they played, I just feel like that could be dangerous if someone's playing 17, because often they might want to be cutting the corner like we saw a lot this weekend. Okay. Johnny V is out there. Hi, Johnny. Says that the DGPT needs to assign more mods, I heard. I did briefly hear that. I heard that specifically the YouTube chat was atrocious, I think is the word I heard. Just atrocious. Like, just people being jerks to all sorts of people, whether it was to the competitors. I can't speak to any of it. I wasn't there. I obviously I'm not out there moderating it. And maybe that is, if you're a really dedicated fan and you frequently watch, we can get you a little hammer, or is that what it goes next to it? To have some kind of moderation. We need to entrust people that are good, upstanding people, like all of you here, every one of you watching. Just get behind a keyboard and just be an absolute jerk. I'll never understand it. I don't care where we are in the world or what's going on. You're watching disc golf and you just want to be an absolute dick on the chat board. I don't understand it. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds like there probably does need to be more mods. Matt is saying, seeing Katrina go all the way to 17 in the lead and then drop to third, the money alone 20K to 5K in 2 holes. Yeah, we kind of touched on that earlier. That was incredible. You production guys are so busy nowadays. You used to be able to do it all, Johnny. Yeah, Johnny is doing more things than ever in the booth, and the last thing he can do is do any form of moderation. And so, yeah, we're going to probably be looking for a little outreach. I don't know how the Disc Golf Network chat board area moderation is. I'm going to assume it's a little bit smoother, cleaner, gentler, friendlier, maybe. But I can't speak to that. But the YouTube one, come on, people, grow up. Other people, not you guys. Terry, I love seeing spectators. All were wearing face coverings and being respectful of each other. Do you think we'll see spectators back in the future events, back for future events in 2020 and into the start of 2020? That is, I want to say that's totally political, because it's not. It's just totally pandemic, which I guess some are going to argue it's political and whatever. I think it's going to come down to what the best practices are, and then what the best accepted guidelines and or insurance and or specifics will be. If the PDGA has certain guidelines, if the Pro Tour has certain guidelines, I'm sure those will somewhat coincide with state and federal guidelines, which will coincide with the CDC. Again, I know we could argue all night about how political that is or isn't, but at the end of the day, to use that cliche, it will always go back to what the generally accepted guidelines are, and then what risk and exposure legally is then attached to it. That's what I can say. And we talked about it last night. You can argue right, wrong, or indifferent about masks. That's fine. However, if the Pro Tour is saying that's what we need to make a tour happen, that's what we'll see. Now, will they be? That's a good question. I don't know where our world's going to be in 6 months. I don't think I'm going to Thailand in 4 months, and that saddens me. I'm not going to Croatia next week, and that saddens me. So I didn't get to go to Finland this year. So who knows? Those are bigger than disc golf questions at this point. So I'm not sure. Sam says it would be cool if 18 was an ace runnable. Would be cool to see the player in second go for broke with this format, but the hole as it is clearly works great. Alex also says when people feel anonymous and invincible in the chat, they just spew sexist and disrespectful comments, and they are totally agreed. And I understand that that's the nature of the internet. Disc golfers or these people that have tuned in are not unique to disc golf coverage. I understand that anonymity goes so far, and then even if some people did have their real legitimate names in there, they just love to be jerks, and that I think is too bad. So that's all I had heard, that it was atrocious, and that's too bad. We're talking about, the finale of the year, this really great culminating event, and to hear that it was some of the worst chat action out there is too bad. There's going to be snow in the next 6 months. That there absolutely will be, Adam. There's going to be snow and a lot less than that. I can guarantee you. How many aces have you thrown, Nick asks. I've been saying it for about 5 years now. I think I'm in the 40 or 50-ish range. And the shortest are 100 and some feet, and the longest are 300 and some feet. So somewhere in that neighborhood. You play enough short courses, or a short course a lot, and you probably rack them up. And yeah, I don't think it's a testament to how good you are personally. Does anyone know if the ESPN will show the ratings of the coverage in November? Probably not, Dan. Just like CBS, I don't know that we're ever going to see the metrics or the Nielsen ratings or any of those things. That I don't know that we'll ever see that. I think the largest factor or tail will be, do they want to do it again? Do they buy time, or do they buy product from us in terms of buying the actual coverage versus us paying them? Do sponsors jump out at us and want to support more coverage on something like ESPN? I feel like that's a good sign. Are they going to share the exact specifics with us? It sounds like it's not industry standard to do so. That's what I feel like we learned from the CBS ordeal. And if they did, I don't know who they would share them with necessarily, if that would be exclusively with the Pro Tour or if there's any other public information. But I'm guessing, if anything, it would be shared with the Pro Tour higher ups, and then they can decide what they do or don't want to share. But that's not stuff I'm privy to, for instance. Carver John, arguably one of the biggest trolls in all of disc golf, says, heck yeah, I'd still shoot my mouth out if I used my real name. Awfully big of you, Carver John. I mean, I don't know why you don't just put all your information out there, since you incessantly bash a ton of the disc golf community, and whether that's our players or our media personalities or whomever. As we all know, you're still right on that line of me just blocking you, and then we never have to see some of the comments you put. I don't know what is so deep inside your heart. I've offered hugs. I hope someday you'll accept one. I don't know how you hurt so bad that you make it a personal goal, it seems like, for you to then cut down and degrade everyone as often and as frequent as you do. And it feels funny saying it directly to you, since you're watching live right now. but you already know this. You know how spiteful and little? No, that's not the right word. Just how spiteful and mean-spirited you are, like day in and day out on so many YouTube channels. And I feel like if you hate things so much and everything about it, I don't know why you stick around. But all right, that's enough wasted breath on that. Off season, I don't have much plans right now. I'm going to be covering some events. Who knows how much of an off season? I'm going to get in shape like every other year. But plans, who knows? It all comes down to what events. That's usually when I find myself covering smaller events, or I've been traveling to a place like Phoenix to cover a few events, or Vegas, or wherever. Florida I've been to for some of the not as big events. I don't know how many of those are going to happen and if coverage is still going to happen, but if so, I will certainly be all about it. Carver John says, I'm usually nice. No, not your online persona. It says absolutely not the case. That would be awesome if you were actually nice in person, and I hope you are to people around you, but your presence online in at least YouTube comments are vile and disgusting. And I really I wish you would get better from within. Memorial will be an event, yes, next year. Does anyone know if the Memorial will still be a playable tournament, just not Pro Tour? Yeah, the Memorial is absolutely happening, and as of right now, it's not. It's not part of the Pro Tour. It's not part of the National Tour. They're planning on at least, I believe, the 2 separate courses. They're planning on 4 days still, and I know in talking to Keith over at the Memorial, he said that they will likely have more available spots for like age protected divisions and some of our amateur or other pro divisions. They've always had to have a certain amount reserved for the MPO and the FPO, simply to fulfill requirements and agreements with being on the national or the pro tour. And now that they won't have those agreements in place, so there might be a few other, I know there's been frustration that there hasn't been enough MP 40 spots available, or hasn't been enough FP 40 spots available. They might have more room next year because they don't have to fulfill obligations to the Pro Tour or the National Tour. Okay. More podcasts. Johnny V is saying there might be maybe some more fun. Of course, during COVID and the early goings, we had our game show, which seemed to be well received. We got to know the players a little bit better. So something like that could be a thing where we see that more often. And then there's other ideas for podcasts and various formats of podcasts that could happen that aren't just what we're currently doing on Tuesday nights. So lots of possibilities there. Am I heading to Myrtle Beach? The answer is no. I think that's next weekend. I do not have any involvement with that. I think I overheard Corey Merle talking about how he was going to maybe be helping Central Coast in some capacity, make footage. Sounds dirty. That they were going to do some coverage of it, and I think that's next weekend. And if that's the case, I'm for sure not involved, as I'm calling up Steve Rico as soon as this is done, and we're locking in a few more details for Vegas. 162 people watching and only 31 thumbs up. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you for begging for me to get a few of them. Let's grow the sport with the thumbs up. There's a reason to show your support. I appreciate that, Adam. Yes. They'll always tell you, in the YouTube algorithms help when you have the likes and the shares and the thumbs up or the subscribes and all that stuff. I hardly remember to tell you guys that. John, I'm not sure who he's speaking to, says, I like your hair and beard. If you're talking to me, I appreciate that. So stoked that the Dodgers just won. Watch every bit of FPO and MPO. Why don't you just settle and play UB40? That's a red wine. That's a good call. What's the deepest snow you ever thrown in? Adam. Hey, Ray, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. That's very sweet of you. Deepest snow, I've played in a couple Milwaukee tournaments with some deep snow. And then I'll kind of I'll combine that with the worst conditions ever, and some of the worst conditions in probably PDGA history. Some of them would have been a cracked plastic that I played in Michigan, in Kalamazoo. Very short, technical, wooded course that some are familiar with. It was played for the 2008 Worlds and a few other Worlds. And just to give you some point, I think I've maybe won that tournament shooting 12 or 16 under on the day on a two sets of 22 or 24. I ended up winning this tournament where we had like 55 below wind chills, and the wind was crazy, and a ton of people quit the tournament. And I think I won the tournament with like a 2 over about 10 years ago. Those were the worst conditions ever. They were. Dana Vici, I believe, was there, along with a ton of not a ton. There was quite a few people. I think the entire Grandmasters division, all 5 of them, agreed they would play the first round, and then they were just done, and they they were good with the results from there. There were I don't know if there was 24 people that ended up quitting the tournament. Some people had frostbite. We were borderline just ignorant for being out there, but I really liked that tournament, so I played. King Heiser says, JVD, Terry, and the Pro Tour, fantastic work this weekend. The show is smooth these days. So much golf shown. I can't walk away. Yeah, there's always an argument as to, like, do we have time for a commercial? Oh, no, we don't have time for a commercial. We need to cut to more golf, or we were able to bank or save some of this other golf from the other group. Let's get back to showing that. And so there's always this dispute going on as to if or when we can cut away from golf and play the commercials, quote unquote, pay the bills. But it seems like there's a lot more golf, and I think you're going to only continue to see the product improve. So I appreciate that. The Packers, he says, cool shirt too. Packers suck. Yeah, Packers. I only saw a headline that said they got trounced. Is that the word? They got beat today. First defeat of the year. I mean, what do they say? You can't win them all unless you're the Miami Dolphins. I don't know. Rest in peace, Don Shula. I just throw out words. I was hoping Haley would show emotions, but that is not her style. So I was pleased by her reaction. The dad in me teared up when she addressed her dad. Yeah, and Chris, Guapo Baskets, big supporter, and Eagles Wings, thank you. Yeah, knowing how young Haley is, watching her come up, I talked about that earlier, throughout all these years, knowing her dad, Hart King is his name, seeing him at tournaments, he often caddies for her. Obviously, he's, taken her to tournaments and I think been one of the driving forces there. And he plays casual rounds with her and when, she's home and all this other stuff. So it was pretty incredible. And you're right. Just like when I saw Paige Shue win a Worlds and her dad and mom were there to celebrate, all of those get me going sometimes as well. Knowing that my daughter, my oldest daughter, turns 12 in 2 days. And I have a younger daughter who's also 9. So I hear you on all of that and agree. Secret Drone super chatted. Oh, those look with some alligators. Maybe a big Calvin fan from Florida. Either way, I appreciate it, Secret Drone, for the super chat. That's very kind of you. Cody also super chatted. Cody, thank you very much. I'd love to talk more about your photos from this weekend too. Chris says ESPN got the story we needed to get them. Yeah, I mean, just think about it, and I know I kind of touched on it earlier. It's this. The story was great. There's no doubt about it. It's interesting to see, though, also that I would have bet a sizable amount that Paul Macbeth would have made it into the finals. Of course, just statistically, you could say that, but he usually has that extra gear, that extra level, that when there's this added pressure or there's something even bigger on the line, I feel like that's when he seems to perform really well. And of course, he came up short. and didn't make it. But I think about, and I'll back that up by saying he wasn't planning on playing the Dynamic Disc Open, for instance. That was, coming back from COVID. That was not on his radar. In fact, I was spent some time with him in Wisconsin at Ben Askren's when we went and played there. There's a couple name drops for you. Brody Smith was there. So, but seriously, we went and played, and it didn't seem like that was really on his agenda. But when the CBS deal became a thing, that's when he knew for himself and for the brand and for his career that going and playing at that event would be impactful. And then obviously, spoiler, he went on to win that event. So that's why I think someone like Paul is maybe a little bit more surprising to see him not get through and perform into the finals. Yeah, I don't know where my story was going, but that's something that did surprise me from that point, knowing his history and what he's done. Yeah, in Michigan, we play no matter the conditions, and thank you for the story. Yes, no, thank you, Adam. Chris, super chat. Thank you, Chris. That's awfully kind and gracious of you. You guys are getting all crazy tonight. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, that's very kind of you guys. And I'm going to wrap up soon here. Otherwise, this could go on for hours. Yes, keep them rolling. I appreciate that. Right, Sam, have a good night. Yeah, thanks for coming by and jumping in here tonight. Carver says those were hippos. Those weren't alligators. Okay. Do you think Paige forced a playoff with a good friend Haley today? Do you think Paige forced a playoff with good friend Haley today? As in, do I think that she in any way she sandbagged a shot? Is that what you're asking, Cody? Because if so, I don't think that's the case. If I'm understanding your question correctly, as in, did she let a playoff happen, or did she maybe lay up her last putt or second to last putt in theory, in order so that they could both go to a playoff? I don't think that was the case. I think she was just hedging her bet that there's a chance Haley could miss the high pressure putt. There was a chance. And that she didn't want to also possibly miss and have a tester as a comeback, and that she thought, hey, I'll take this to overtime and I'll try and beat her in overtime. So if you're asking if there was any friendship played into that, or any kind of I don't want to say sympathy, that's not the right word, but if you're asking that, though, I think the answer is absolutely not. Paige has friends and likes to, but Paige is far too competitive and would love to win. And put the dagger in if she has that opportunity, if that's what you're asking. Because he has a great story. Everyone donates $2 and Terry gets a free flight home. Yeah, that would be sweet. Is Jomez cutting the final round down for ESPN? Short answer is yes. There are other pieces that are put together or being added in, and it sounds like it's kind of a group or team effort, but Jomez is the primary editor and producer, I don't think is the word, but primary editors. They were shooting all the footage, and then additional stuff will get put into the mix. And Keith and Ryan also super chatting. Okay, now you guys are going to make me blush. I'm going to get wild and have another sparkling ice here if you guys keep that up. You guys are saying it's crazy because you don't want the Pro Tour to end for 4 months. I know. And just reflect on that for a brief moment and think how a ton of golf didn't get played this year. We had some restrictions and we had some very specific guidelines that had to be followed and adhered to and maintained. And then our top level competitors were able to still go out and earn a living this year. And I know I kind of broke down numbers last night about you look at someone like a Paige or almost all of the players, anyone that was here this weekend at least, and you see they may have played 13 or 14 events this year, and 10 of them were Pro Tour stops, or 9 of them were Pro Tour stops. So the Pro Tour was the backbone of professional high-level disc golf and disc golf payouts this year. And of course, there's a ton of other tournaments that happen and will continue to, but the Pro Tour was where the money and the media was for this year. And I think that really solidified what the Pro Tour has been working on and how it continues to grow and thrive. And I think a real statement. I think that's a Nate Dawes term. It wasn't a statement putt; it was a statement year in that sense that the Pro Tour was able to accomplish what it did, thanks to the players, thanks to the sponsors, and then also thanks to the individual events, and then everyone at the Pro Tour staff. And will there be a virtual putting tourney? I think that might come back out again. I don't know the details to it, but I do think it's on, at least penciled into the calendar for the off season. Austin Johnson, appreciate it for the super chat. Thank you. You missed the playoff. Where you been? 2 holes. Spoiler, it's 2 holes. Simon could showed up and threw 1 shot and would have cashed, withdrew and got a check. He's a class act to open his spot. Yes, I did touch on that exact sentiment a little while ago, Dan. I'm already ahead of you, buddy. Dust Muret. Is that how I pronounce it? But anyway, thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it. Gosh, look at you guys. Like I said, you're going to make me blush. Did off-season 2.0 help the players get ready for the condensed disc golf season like never seen before? I can't remember a better, more competitive season. Yeah, condensed is a good word, but also it was really focused and concentrated. We weren't too concerned about too many other events. And obviously, not that the national tour detracts, but we were so laser focused on each and every disc golf pro tour event for the reasons I just said. It was the only game in town, or the main game in town. And so you didn't have a lot of people peeling off and being like, well, I'm going to play this national tour, and then that takes me out of the loop a little, so I'm going to skip the pro tour. Like, the pro tours was where all of the major action was. There were still great A tiers and lots of other great events. Do not get me wrong, but condensed and hyper focused, I think, would be the phrases that I would use. Drew says, I'm not knocking Haley's decision to skip college. I'm saying that it was a roller coaster of emotions this season, with the tour getting canceled and then winning $20K makes a great story. Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to look at that. You know, everybody's trying to decide what's right for them, and then COVID's crazy. And look at Paige Bjerkes a couple of years ago. She was enrolled. She was ready to go to college, and then decided that she didn't want to at that time, and then went to Vermont in the first part of September when she would have, in theory, been just starting college, and won her first world championships. Now, clearly not everyone has that fallback option. I'm not going to go to college this semester. I'm going to go win worlds. Clearly, that's not always an option, but disc golf's getting more and more serious, and as it's providing more opportunities than ever before. Whether they're right or wrong, that's up to every single individual. And I feel differently today, obviously, than I would have 20 years ago. And that's not just about people skipping college to disc golf. I think that's about people deciding not to go to college in general. I think I very much have softened my views on that as well. There's a lot of opportunities in the world. Terry, looking for my email, terry@prodiscgolfer.com. I'll just throw it out there. terry@prodiscgolfer.com is a good one. I want to start younger players in the game getting online classes. Yeah, I mean, I think of a Valerie Jenkins also, who was on tour and got her degree online throughout being on tour. There were nights she was playing at Vibram or Maple Hill, whatever you call it, at the time. She would play, and then I'd see her in the van doing her online work, and she'd do that literally all over the country. Hence, being online, that's another absolutely plausible option if somebody is so inclined to do so. And again, I just think the opportunities and the chances now more than ever make those things a reality, or can make them a reality. You can always go back to school. You may not always be in your prime to compete at a high level. That's another, I think, valid way to look at it. Would you want one of your daughters to pursue disc golf first if they were at that level when college starts? To me, it would be all about if they want to go to college, because I'm a firm believer now more than ever that if they don't want to go, then I don't think they should go. And I say that because the one that I think, the daughter of mine that might not go or is less likely to go, might be up watching right now, for all I know, the 9-year-old. My two daughters are very different. The one that's about to turn 12, I have a feeling will go to college, maybe get postgraduate of some form to pursue something. And that's just the way she's driven and what she likes and how she is. And the other one may struggle to get through high school at this rate. She's 9, so who knows? But and I am so much more accepting of that idea than I was even 20 years ago, just because I do feel like there's so many more opportunities in the world for things to do and to be successful at. I think some people laugh at me when they know what I do for a living, which to some is crazy in the first place, and to know I have 2 degrees that may or may not be directly related to being in disc golf media. And I got an information systems degree and I got a communications degree. And I was an office person in college at the at the journalism and mass communications department, but I took 0 journalism and mass communication classes. So I took no film, no editing, no interviewing, no broadcasting, none of those. I took none of those classes, even though I worked in that department making copies. And now I do disc golf media. So who knows? Any thoughts of getting some high-level kid content for the future so we can try and get kids more interested? I think people like Matt Graham and his brother Josh over at Kids Disc Golf, I think are right in line with what you're saying. And I think there's other great programs, and to some degree Edge and You Play Disc Golf, but I think those guys are absolutely trying to dial in exactly what you're saying. I wouldn't be opposed to being involved or helpful or helping in that way. It's clearly not a specific focus of mine right now, but I think that, and I think anyone could take that. I think somebody could say, hey, right now there is a need for high-level kids disc golf content for everything you just said. I think somebody could take that idea and run with it. It doesn't have to be passed off. I think anyone that's passionate about it could take that idea and run with it. Or check out collegediscgolf.com. I think he's talking a little younger, but yeah, check those things out as well. Does Shoestrick still play? I remember watching his YouTube videos when I started. Yeah, he played in the USDGC last week or 10 days ago. I think he had 2 really good rounds and then 2 not as good rounds. I don't remember the exact details, but yeah, he plays. He just doesn't play a ton of high-level competitive tournaments like he used to, as he is working plenty of hours over there at Prodigy. And they are expecting their first child very soon. I saw a post about it, but it's very soon. College teams in Michigan. Yep. I have a BA in history and communications and a MA in history, and I'm a freelance in esports. I want to get into disc golf stuff, and I'm part-time EMT. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody's got different life path, and it's funny because I was just thinking about, how some of these things may or may not be at all related to where we are now. And I just feel like those opportunities are bigger and grander more now than ever, for sure. Who's a better disc golfer, Climber or Macbeth? I'm not even going to answer that because we're going to get in a fight about it, and they could go on for hours. They're both great, especially in their primes. Who's better, Jordan or Kobe or King James, whatever. Hearing you this week and doing your interviews was awesome. You really seem to take the reins and make the process less nervous for one being interviewed. I appreciate that, Cody. I'll just admit, as much as I'm seemingly can talk to you guys now, one of my favorite things to do is interview our players. I enjoy trying to pull from not only the round, but a little bit of the experience that I've had with them. I think I always use the example now, but I think back to meeting Kyle Klein 3 years ago at an event. I think back to the very first time when someone like Heather Young showed up at Idlewild, and I met her parents and I met her sisters, and I learned all about the various colors and how they throw them and why they throw them, or why they all wear individual colors. Like all those backstories that I try to store and process, I love trying to hopefully draw from those when I do an interview. I always, I guess, the only mentality that I've developed, and this even happens on our podcast, is I want to come and start with one question. Hopefully, it's a decent or a solid question. I think about usually literally one question. And then from there, everything is 100% spur of the moment and in the moment. And so it's sometimes my brain, my brain malfunctions. Sometimes it doesn't. But when they're giving me an answer about whatever I just asked them, hopefully I'm drawing from something they said that leads to my next question. And I feel like that's one of my favorite parts about doing interviews. Believe it or not, people always say to us before coming on Smashbox, they'll say, well, what are the questions going to be? How can I prep, or can I get ready? And I'm like, I don't know. I know what your first question is going to be, maybe. And then from there, it all is off the cuff. So I appreciate that you say that, Cody, but that is one of my, that is certainly one of my favorite parts about being in disc golf media. I wish there was more that I could do with that. I don't know where it goes or how I expand on that, but I do wish there was more I could do with it, because I feel like that's one of the things that I'm a little bit stronger at than some of the other areas. I'm not really a researcher. I'm not really a stats person. I like to draw from those personal experiences, which is why I love being at events so much, because I get more of those one-on-one or real life in-person experiences that then hopefully I can retain and recall at another time. You give more frequent updates with exact distances. We need more T-Dog. Yeah, the one thing I'll say about me coming in today on holes 6 and 13 or 6 and 14, those were somewhat pre-planned out. We're looking for holes that our cameramen, our catch cameramen, don't have to move, so I can have the audio to them. And that worked out, I think, really well on hole 6 today. 13 and 14 were a little tougher, but on hole 6, I feel like it works really well. And that's become kind of an easy thing for me to look at, to see what players have done on that hole in the past. And so thanks to you, Disc, I can kind of quickly give you those. And some of those numbers were astonishing to me. The fact that hole 14 has been birdied only 7 out of 40 times, and it is played as one of the most difficult holes, that did stand out to me, as opposed to, how hole 6 had played. And the fact that hole 6, let's just say that for a moment, hole 6 playing 453 feet with somewhat of a tunnel to shoot through, so you're a little bit restricted, and then having OB on the wide right side, and it's still playing as easy as it did, like, that tells me the level and just how good these players are. At 453, to see that play as the 6th easiest hole on the course, I think is just ridiculous. So, Terry, will you use a rangefinder on the course for DGPT events next season? Maybe. I mean, thanks to Bushnell, I have one, and I know they've helped out with some. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Depends what my role will be, and if it's how much it's required. It also depends on the hole. If I know a hole is 400 feet, and by where I'm standing, and then I can see relative to circle 1 and circle 2, I can give you a pretty reasonable estimation. It's when you're on hole 12 and it's 870 feet downhill and to the right. That's where I think a rangefinder does become so much more advantageous, whether it's to the pin or back to the tee. That I could give more frequent updates with distances. Yeah, I mean, I like the logic there. I'm not opposed to it. It's just a matter of then how to communicate that back, and whether I'm communicating or am I just sharing that with someone, and then they spit it out at the booth. That could almost be a dedicated volunteer if it's simply to give numbers back. But if it's for me to come in and then provide a little more detail or analysis on top of it, that's an angle that I could certainly go. I miss on-site commentary. Sometimes I do as well, Tim, but I do think that me not calling the shots while the players are stepping up to throw or getting ready to throw or are throwing or have just thrown, I do think makes for a better, more cohesive environment out on the course. It was always really awkward and tough. Somebody hits the first available tree on 16, whether that was Macbeth yesterday or or whether that was Paige today, it's kind of awkward to be within earshot of them and be like, oh, she squared up on that tree. she really hit first available. This is the most important shot of the tournament. She's going to need to get up and down from here. Having them be within earshot of that on the course always was mildly awkward, depending on what needed to be said. Drew, I'll share that another night. Remind me another night to give you the full backstory to the Ricky's Nantucket Stop and Shop disc bag. It's a good story. So remind me to share it another night. We don't even need you. We don't even need to have you on camera. Thanks, Ray. I work on this, Think Nate Sexton's role during USDGC. You can constantly be available to add color. I do appreciate that. And we have talked about that. You're exactly right. As a sideline reporter, I'm not necessarily needed for you to see my face to come in and give you information, but really just as a voice to come in. Right now, that's just resources. We have 4 cameras out there. Sometimes there's 2 cameras with one group, 2 cameras with another. And depending on how often and where those cameramen are moving, that limits the availability for me to then come in and give additional insight. And then we're still working on communication with the guys and girls back in Bend, because right now I can't hear them at all. So as we find a solution for that, I think you're going to find things to be a little bit more seamless back and forth. Ray says, just with a mic while on the course, unmute yourself and you can contribute. I do appreciate that. Like I said, we'd need a more seamless communication, I think, for that to work, because right now I have no idea. I'm just told, okay, Terry, talk. That's what I'm told. There's a hand count that tells me, all right, you start talking. And then I throw it back to the booth usually. But right now I have no idea what they're talking about. They could have been making fun of my hair. Okay, let's be real. They weren't doing that. But they could have been talking about all sorts of things. Usually I kind of know where things are going. I have an idea, but I don't know specifically if they just got done talking about Ricky Wysocki's Lyme disease, or if they, I don't always know all those details. And I think I know we'll get there. Lowest score at Hornets Nest, I can't tell you, but I know 10 was ridiculous on this format that was shot yesterday. And then it could have been maybe matched today had Kevin needed the birdie. That doesn't really matter. It's, I guess, speculative. Biggest word of the day for me. But, 10 by Kelvin. Did Philo shoot a 10 or 11 last year? I feel like the course was a little bit easier. Just maybe a couple strokes easier. I feel like Philo shot a 10 or 11 last year. I get it now. Would be better with more seamless production. You're exactly right. All right, guys. This has been far too long, as always. I'm going to call it. I could talk to you guys for hours. You already know that. And maybe there's a whole show of that. I feel like we'd eventually run out of things, but you guys keep asking great questions, and hopefully I provide some insight. But that would be kind of a funny. We could call it like answers within disc golf, or a man answers disc golf answer man. I don't know. There's some options out there. I don't know if anyone else is using that. But Billy out of Minnesota says, hats off to Terry, one of the hardest working media guys, single-handedly out there bringing us coverage. I do whatever I can, and more often than not, there is a team, at least for the live, there is definitely a team that puts it all together. And to be frank, I wouldn't have tournaments to babble on about if we didn't have tournament directors and all the hardworking people and all the sponsors and everyone else that makes a tournament happen, so that we even have action and play to talk about. So I want to thank, of course, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, Smashbox. I want to thank all of the presenting sponsors in Grip 6, plus all of the other sponsors of the event this weekend. I want to thank my less than amazing Microtel Inn and Suites. The story I'll tell quickly is that there was a beep from the fire alarm or the smoke detector. So I tried to get the battery out, but I couldn't quite. And then I had the front desk person come and help me yesterday. So we got the battery out. We pulled it off the wall. We're like, okay. And just as she was about to leave, It was actually the one above my bed, which is like taped up there in the weirdest way. And then that was the one that had the dead battery, and she didn't have access to any more 9 volts. So we ripped them both out of the wall. So I'm sure they're breaking some kind of code. So keep your fingers crossed there's no fires here tonight or last night, because I have 0 working smoke detectors. And when I brought it back up tonight, there was no urgency. So shame on you. Love you guys. Appreciate it. I don't know when in the world there'll be a next update like this, probably the next big event. Maybe, if you guys like them. Thank you to the super chatters. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers. We've got footage from Norway coming. I've got Ledgestone Insurance Open footage, and then likely also Halloween footage and action coming from Las Vegas. I'll pick up that footage next week. And I have sponsorship opportunities available so if you or your club or your event would like to sponsor and be part of supporting that coverage, you're welcome to do that as well. I am signing out for the last time from Charlotte and from the incredible experience I've had over here over the last couple of weeks. You guys have been awesome. All right. Only thing that's left is my cheesy outros, which here they come. Good night. And now, closing down for the 4th and final night from the 2020 Disc Golf Pro Tour Championships, it's Terry Miller, the Disc Golf Guy, signing out from Microtel Inn & Suites. Look forward to seeing you next time. Tip your servers. I don't know, and do other weird stuff. Good night, everyone. Disc Golf Guy signing off.